Hey everybody, Nick Espinoza, your chief security fanatic here. And in basically terrible news, we have to talk about terrorgrams. Now, you may not know what they are, but they are actually a national security threat for multiple nations around the globe, not just the United States. And this is a huge thing. Now, there has been some really good research done by the Institute for Strategic Dialogue, or ISD, on this, and follow-up reporting by Bloomberg. And we're going to dive into both because, quite frankly, this is something that is deeply concerning. Now, here's what's going on. ISD conducted a network analysis of Telegram channels that essentially disseminate propaganda from what is known as the Terrorgram Collective. Now, this is a disparate online network of neo-fascist accelerationists, as they're known, that essentially has been linked to either arrests or attacks in the United States, Canada, and Slovakia, and they were actually prescribed by the UK government this past April. Now, although most of this focus has been on the group's overtly violent content, ISD analysis identified multiple large channels that are not officially branded as being part of a Terrorgram collective, but they appear to be controlled by the collective or its supporters, and obviously that means they're reaching a much wider audience, and that audience may not know that. Now, all three basically are pushing subscribers of the Terrorgram collective to join associated group chats where content supporting mass violence and societal collapse is essentially the name of the game. That's what they're talking about. Now, Telegram bots are also used to synchronize and spread material across these multiple Telegram channels where the users may not know that they are part of this Terrorgram collective, or at least receiving this information. So this reveals a coordinated strategy to indoctrinate less ideologically committed viewers into violent extremist positions that allows the Terrorgram collective to broadcast their messaging to a larger audience that would otherwise be possible. Now, ultimately, the sprawling nature of the Terrorgram collective and its mixture of overt and covert online operations is challenging the ability of group-based prescription approaches to adequately address this threat across the world. And so some of the key findings that ISD found, and these are absolutely just beyond interesting and scary at the same time. Their analysis shows how 3 Telegram channels, which collectively have over 70,000 subscribers, are now serving as a gateway to far-right terrorist content that is associated with the collective. None of these channels are officially aligned with the Terrorgram, nor do they disseminate Terrorgram-branded materials. However, two primary functions, basically two of these groups primarily function as news aggregators, while one of them claims to be associated with Steve Bannon's War Room podcast. You may know Steve Bannon from Donald Trump. He was in the Trump administration, and Steve Bannon has gone around the world basically talking to radicals, all this kind of stuff, to basically push his political ideology. Now, these channels are far more successful in attaining large followers than the overt Terrorgram spaces, which typically only have several hundred subscribers. In other words, you're ideologically, let's say, pushed very far to the right, but you're not quite blow up the world. And so you're not joining the blow up the world channels, but you're basically joining something that's adjacent to that. Now, another point that ISD found is that all 3 channels were connected to group chats, which were filled with violent material, including Terrorgram propaganda. On top of this, a bot account, as I mentioned before, that was found in all 3 chats, and also in more overt Terrorgram groups, allowing users to anonymously funnel extremist content to these subscribers. In other words, they are starting or trying to make basically people into extremists, and therefore extremists tend to cause violent action. Now, there is strong evidence that the prevalence of Terrorgram content in these group chats is not coincidental, and that the main channels are linked to the collective. This includes administrators espousing racist views, posts in explicit Terrorgram channels encouraging members to join non-explicit channels. In other words, go fuel the propaganda, but don't tell them, you're with us, and the aforementioned bot account. And basically all of these overlap in membership between group chats and those more overt Telegram channels, meaning we are finding essentially Terrorgram, committed Terrorgram members in these not as extreme channels trying to basically convert to the extreme. Members of the collective have also previously called for infiltration of non-Terrorgram spaces in their own channels as well. So far, And this is another point. ISD has not found evidence that the Terrorgram's efforts have been successful in radicalizing or recruiting through this mainstreaming method, but such tactics essentially serve to expose a wider audience to overt terrorist content and therefore risk drawing unsuspected members of these larger channels into more violent extremist communities where obviously they can be radicalized. Now, the following analysis was based on qualitative review of over 60 Telegram channels that espouse accelerationist rhetoric. Most of this had posted material from the Terrorgram collective. Several of these were observed sharing content from 3 seemingly nonviolent channels, which led ISD to conduct further research to determine the nature of their relationship with the collective. ISD also examined this bot that was connected to the collective, which was present in these multiple group chats and was used to disseminate content across the various groups, including the 3 that essentially they were focusing on in the core of their report. Now, various pieces of evidence also suggest that these 3 channels are part of a coordinated endeavor by adherents of the Terrorgram collective to infiltrate and control more mainstream places. When a user in one of these news aggregator groups, for example, criticized the Charleston church shooter, Dylan Roof, the administrator promptly responded by describing him as a hero for killing a black politician and activist. Obviously, not a good look, but these are the kinds of people that we're talking about. And in another conversation while discussing an article, and I actually talked about this event a couple of years ago in an article about the Terrorgram's reaction to the attack on the North Carolina power grid in 2022. Somebody went and started shooting transformers that knocked out power to regions in North Carolina. That same administrator that called Dylan Roof a hero noted that 2 Terrorgram-affiliated individuals were explicitly referenced in the piece as if they essentially knew them on a first-name basis. And so what we are talking about here is essentially a group that is willing to essentially create societal strife, to essentially bring about revolution, violent and extremist revolution in this country. Now, on top of ISD's reporting, as I mentioned, Bloomberg just reported that these Terrorgram chat rooms are now fueling a wave of U.S. power grid attacks in an attempt to destabilize society. And we've seen attacks in other states, not to the level of North Carolina, but these are coming. These are people that are radicalizing because they believe in the violent overthrow of the government to essentially bring in a neo-fascist state. And that is something that is a huge, huge problem. And as we start to track domestic violent extremism, and other countries track this as well, these are the kinds of people that we are seeing that are committed to recruiting more to their cause. They are committed to essentially, causing violence, with obviously cruelty being the point, no empathy whatsoever. And so this is something that we need to watch, but everybody needs to be aware that these violent extremists are out there. They are active and they are actively recruiting. And I think that's something that is lost on the general public. When we, especially in an election year, when we get caught up on, a policy position that Trump has versus Harris or whatever, when there are forces at work trying to really bring down the whole thing. So this is obviously a huge issue. That is your news of the day. And hopefully, we're actually going to be able to stop them before they strike. And unfortunately, they already have. And they continue to grow, and that's not a good thing. So take that for what it's worth, but heads up, can't say you haven't been told. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP, and please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well. And as always, stay safe, stay online, and please attempt to stay private. Thanks, everybody.